Thank you for coming to this special lecture and afternoon with Lauren Greenfield. It's a real honor to have her in town with us, and she is the director of Queen of Versailles, which will screen at 5:30, and she's also an acclaimed documentary and fine art photographer. And it's worth noting that when we programmed Queen of Versailles for the festival, we heard from her about coming to Oklahoma City, which is always an honor, and so please give a warm welcome to Lauren Greenfield.
We have a small group today, so if you want to move up, we can have a more intimate discussion. So thank you, Brian, and the Oklahoma City Museum and the Film Festival for inviting me here. It's really nice to have the chance to share my work. We can leave the lights on for a second before I'm going to talk a little bit before I start showing pictures, but I'm going to show you a selection of photography and film work today from the last 20 years, and my work has primarily focused on the sociological and specifically on themes of gender and body image and youth culture and the ways we're affected by popular culture and consumerism. And thank you. Much of this work has been made over a journey of making the three books that I've spent kind of most of this time on: Fast Forward, Girl Culture, and Thin, and then also my 4 films. So Thin was my first film, dovetailing with the Thin book, and then Kids and Money and Beauty Culture, and the newest work, The Queen of Versailles, which is going to be out in theaters July 20th. It's my first film in the theaters, and that's what we're going to screen here after this lecture. At this point in my work, I'm as engaged in the video as I am in the still photography. So I'm also going to show you some clips from the video work, which really delves into the same subject matter as the photography, but in a more narrative and a more longitudinal way. The filmmaker Jean Renoir said that all of his work was really continuing on the same project and kind of doing making the same film again and again. And in that spirit, I'm going to show how my work has also been the product of this evolutionary process, with one project really inspiring and leading to the next. In the work that I'm going to show you today, my access and point of view has been informed by being a woman, from having been a teenager, from my own upbringing in Los Angeles, from the process of my own aging, and from my experience and access as a journalist and as a magazine photographer and as an image maker. My work has always focused on documenting and understanding people in a cultural context. That's my basic passion. I've always been fascinated by cultural values, cultural identity, ritual, and these are the themes that have really driven the direction of my work and the choice of my subjects for as long as I can remember. The work that got me excited as a student and made me want to take pictures in the first place was work by the street photographers of the 60s and 70s. Gary Winogrand, Robert Frank, Diane Arbus, Cartier-Bresson. Work that showed reality, often moments in everyday life, through the photographer's eye in a way that commented on society or revealed something previously unrevealed, and maybe revealed something that if you'd been standing right beside the photographer, you wouldn't have seen. And only in that moment of the photograph, those connections are made. I studied visual anthropology and photography at Harvard, and I got my first big break by getting selected to be the photographic intern at National Geographic. And it was on the basis of a portfolio that I shot after college on the French aristocracy. We can bring down the lights. When I was 14, I spent a year living in France, and I boarded with an aristocratic family. And after college, the mother of this French family provided entree into this closed world for me to make this project. And I was mostly interested in the way that they were able to maintain themselves as an elite and closed social class. After 200 years after the French Revolution, it was the bicentennial of the French Revolution, which had deprived them of the money and privilege that usually accompanies an elite class. Can we just turn off all the lights? Except for, you can keep this one. And part of the excitement of this project, this is a party in the country for the kids, and a dinner in a chateau, and the children in church. And part of the excitement of this project had to do with being both an insider and an outsider in this world. I was very close to my French family and had really learned how to talk the talk and walk the walk with them, the subtleties of the language and the manners, But at a time when I was trying to figure out who I was, it was also clear that I could never be one of them. And I bring this up, and this is at a family reunion at a chateau. And I show these pictures now, even though they're 25 years old, because this cultural assimilation and at the same time this conflict between being an insider and an outsider, being an observer and a participant, has been a kind of motivating and defining tension in all of my documentary projects. And if you stay for the film, The Queen of Versailles, you'll also see that there are echoes of this aristocratic aspiration in The Queen of Versailles. And Jackie, the main character, is kind of a modern day Marie Antoinette. And this contrast between new money and the American dream and this world. But I started by documenting faraway cultures, the exotic, as has been the tradition of many photojournalists and anthropologists. And my first project after my internship was a National Geographic assignment photographing a Maya Indian village in the highlands of Chiapas. That's what this is from. And sorry, I'm just trying to see if we have the full image. And I had been down there when I was a kid. My mother was a professor of psychology, and she was the writer on this project, and she had been working on a project that had brought me down there when I was 3 and 4 years old. So we had a long-standing relationship with a family there that allowed us access into a place that had been traditionally very hard to photograph. But even after spending 4 months there, I still felt like an outsider looking in on an exotic culture. And with the Maya, there were many issues of access. Traditional beliefs forbid photography. As a woman, I had to work through the Maya language instead of Spanish, and I was struggling with that. And basically, every photograph was the result of a complex negotiation. And I felt like once I was able to jump over all these hurdles and actually make a picture, I was only able to describe the surface of what I saw, to kind of document it in a literal way. And I wasn't able to go to the next level of meaning and understanding and actually say something about what I was seeing, which was the quality I'd loved in Robert Frank and Gary Winogrand's work as a student. So I started to think about the world I had grown up in, which was LA, and its representations in the media. There was a popular TV show at the time, Beverly Hills 90210, which had an international following, and Less Than Zero was a novel that was a seminal book for my generation, kind of a book of drug-filled, excess, jaded people. And I realized that this place, Los Angeles and Hollywood, that originates so much of the popular culture that's then exported around the world, was very influential and worthy of serious documentation. And I thought that the time it took me to gain access and understanding of a foreign culture would be better spent going deeper into an examination of my own. So I knew I wanted to photograph a subject that I understood and had a personal stake in, and where my perspective was going to make a difference in the pictures. So I went back to my high school. This is from my high school graduation. And I began the work that became my first book, Fast Forward, Growing Up in the Shadow of Hollywood. And I started to explore what had been an ambivalent but formative experience for me. And the project was really about the early loss of innocence in a media-saturated society, and how kids were influenced by the values of Hollywood, the culture of materialism, and the cult of celebrity, and the importance of image. This is from Beverly Hills High Senior Ditch Day, and Mia Genoux in the foreground was voted best body at Beverly Hills High. And she was actually not from a rich family, and talked about how hard it was to be in that world and not have the clothes and cars that everybody else had and that were important for status. But she also recognized that beauty was her passport into the cool clique. This is a 3-year-old in Barney's in Beverly Hills. And a bar mitzvah party where they brought in go-go girls to dance with the kids. And Adam was the first interview I did. I started the interviews just for my own research, and then realized that the first-person testimonials were really important for the project. And he talked about how he thought money ruined kids, and even thought money had ruined him. And he said his parents also were worried about that and send him to camp every summer in Michigan so he can learn how to be normal. And this is Emily, who was 9 years old, who was living in a $3,000 a night presidential suite in the Peninsula Hotel in Beverly Hills for the last 3 months. Actually, their her father's assets were seized by the IRS, and their mansions, and so they were slumming it in this hotel with the family and staff all in this one suite. And this is Matthew, who was the son of a Hollywood agent, and his mother was also worried that Hollywood could be a bad influence. And so in her efforts to normalize her kids' life, she bought them all kinds of exotic wildlife. This is the albino snake and their iguana. They had a boa constrictor that escaped from its cage and got into Dad's treadmill and got flattened when he turned it on. And a bat mitzvah party where the parents rented out the 20th Century Fox commissary for the party. And so some of the themes that I then continued to explore in girl culture emerged here about body image. And this is Ashley, who's 13 on the scale, with her parents looking on. And you can see that she's got a teen magazine in her bathroom. And I tried to kind of look at the whole dialectic of influence. And she's reading teen magazine. And so then I wanted to go photograph a teen magazine photo shoot. And this is a photo shoot with a model illustrating a spread about how to wash your back. And Brandon, who's 13, and his mother at his bar mitzvah party. And he said that his mother dresses very fashionably, but sometimes too fashionably, and so he gets embarrassed, and that his friends think his mom looks really young. So I was interested in this role reversal between parents and kids. As kids were getting old quickly, parents seemed to be staying young forever. And similarly, this is Mijanu, who's 18, who you met before, and her little brother Nick, giving away their mother in their mother's second wedding. And Lindsay, who's getting a nose job, this is immediately post-op, and the nurse is holding up the nose, that her pre-operative nose, which she's now 18, and her parents made her wait. She wanted this nose job since she was 12 and was literally miserable over her nose kind of every day of her life. She would only sit in the back corner in her classroom so that her friends couldn't see her profile, or the other kids couldn't see her profile. And by the time she was 18 and got this done, 6 out of her 10 closest friends had had some kind of plastic surgery, either nose job, breast enlargement, breast reduction, or liposuction. So it was no stigma at all to show up at a party with bandages on. This is July 4th. And I photographed, switching gears a little bit, I photographed kids who are trying to get into the business or working in the business and looking for fame that way. As I left the rich kids and started photographing other kinds of kids, the thing they had in common was everybody looking for some kind of notoriety, looking for some kind of fame, which was very different than in the French aristocracy or in the Maya, where people are really looking to conform and to fit in. And this is a beauty contest where girls are coming from all over California vying for an elite modeling contract. And Jennifer on the left is 12 years old. And a modeling agency, a modeling school in Pasadena, where the owner likes to do runway shows at old homes as a community service. And this is at Hollywood High in the nutrition break, where the girls are inhaling air freshener. And they would inhale air freshener and snort speed at nutrition break and at lunch. And the speed, in addition to giving them a cheap high, was also a way for them to control their weight. And you can see my feet here. And these girls are from a little rap group called Triple Threat. And they're white girls from the Valley, and they sing songs with titles like Pimped by the Industry. And here they are signing their first big TV deal with the biggest lawyers in Beverly Hills. So 10 years, I did this project. This book came out in 1997. It was kind of my first big project, my first book. And 10 years later, I had the opportunity to go back and look at the same subject in video. And I made a short film called Kids and Money. And I'm going to show you, first of all, one of the kids in the movie was Phoebe, who I'd photographed at 3. at Barney's, and she was then 16. So this project was over a few years, and by the time I came back to her, she was 16. So I'm going to show you a clip. The first clip will be Phoebe. And this Kids and Money was really a conversation with kids about the role of money in their lives and kind of how it played into status and their friends and their relationship with their parents. Phoebe's here.
But my mom's all about the help. She works, and so does Tom, so you sort of have to have a nanny. She picks up the kids and does the shopping, cleans our rooms, and it sort of becomes a part of our daily life. So people help on the weekends. We have another babysitter who comes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. At my dad's, there's like 4 nannies or something ridiculous, because there's 3 children, so everyone needs a nanny. And my dad has a trainer, and we have gardeners. That's about it. The dog walker. In LA, the money it's on the surface level. You don't even have to play detective to find out who someone is. It's right there in your face. Like you meet someone, hi, I'm this person, I'm rich, or hi, I'm this person, I wish I was rich. And it shows up everywhere. It's how tan you are, what jewelry you're wearing, your book bag, how expensive is your book bag? Girls have like $3,000 book bags just for school. In 7th grade, girls are reading like colored Louis Vuitton to carry their pencils. It doesn't stop in high school. It doesn't stop in your 20s. What car you drive, where you work, what kind of suit you're wearing. It's a whole image thing that Hollywood sort of forces you to try to fit into. Every weekend there's an event, and some people go all out for the events, and it's crazy. I know girls who could spend $400 on one night when it's just not even an event. For our prom, we all got picked up in a big Hummer limo, and I think it was $100 a person. So we all get into this big limo and go out to dinner. We all spend like $50 there. Then we go to after prom, which is $40, and we're just throwing money at everyone, and it's sort of a crazy experience.
I can't spend like these girls spend, and my mom's a single mom, she's a therapist, so she works really hard to try to keep our house, and I basically couldn't afford the event. It was a really expensive event, and I didn't really want to bug my mom about it because I know that we're kind of tight with money, so I just decided I just stayed home, and then everyone came over and got ready. But it was okay. I was really glad to have everyone over, and I didn't really say that it wasn't going because I couldn't afford it. I didn't want anyone to feel guilty about that or anything. It's junior year, it's not senior prom, so I didn't have my heart set on going. My heart was broken.
So this project went from rich to poor, kind of looking at how kids from different neighborhoods in LA were affected by money, and this next one is Cameron from South Central.
My name is Cameron. I stay on 87th Street, off Normandy in Manchester, and I'm 17. My parents take well good care of me and my little brother. We're not rich, and we can't have everything we want, but we get, what we need. And what they can't do for me, I'm going to do. And I found all type of hustles. I done did that on my own. Ever since I was about 15, I've been grinding. All money ain't good money, but, I basically try to get it the positive way. If people can't get what they want, the right way, then if they really want it, they going to try to get it any way possible. I got homies that rob some stores at the one time right now. Clothes be important. Stuff be important. You gotta keep your rep up. people getting clowned on. That's another thing that be happening at school. You never heard, like, they call it, like, you got milked. I mean, they be shooting on you, like, oh, like, you shot at the swap meet? What? Swap meet shopping? That's what they can tell. People can just start clowning on you. It's just not a good feeling, because I could just see it, like, that's cold. In front of the girls and all that. Just that ain't the business. I don't know what it's like, because I never been in that situation, you feel me? But I got outfits. The first thing you gotta get is money. And that's what I'm trying to aim for, is trying to get the money, like all type of looking at new things, I'm gonna do this, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna start looking into investments, all type of stuff. I'm trying to think big. One of my dreams is to just, rap. Like, it's fun. Like, to me, it's like the best, that's like the best thing. Rappers get everything. They be in movies, they go on tour, they own shows, radio, they own like all the media, like they own all the media, everything. They own everything, pretty much. Yo, I step up in the club with my.
I'm going to stop there. I'm going to show you two other characters. One is Zoe, who lives in a one-room apartment. In one bedroom with her parents. And then Ashley and Courtney, two suburban girls, will follow.
Do something else.
But he's worked steadily since 13 and helped pay bills. Yes, he has.
Well, when I was younger, I had my own room, and we actually had a spare bedroom, so, like, I mean, you totally take it for granted, and now that, like, you're sharing 10 feet of space with 3 people, it's just, like, there are some nights they smell like ghost stuff up there.
This is our bed, that's her bed, No privacy sometimes. As she's getting older, it's getting a bit more awkward, and everyone has to know what time someone's working and what time someone's school scheduled if you want private time. It's a bit inconvenient.
We never have serious fights. It's always like, I want to watch this and this is on, and like we'll have fights over like a TV show and stuff. But you can't really argue because she's paying the rent.
Yeah. Then you pay the bills as the boss. Is that Blink 182 or something?
Green Day.
Oh, Green Day. There we go. I mean, that was who she liked when she was a bit younger.
Yeah.
Sort of. I don't think she even likes them now.
I like Green Day.
Do you? I apologise. Oh, my husband's a bus driver. He's driven buses for like 28 years now. So we drove buses in England. We both were bus drivers in England. And we just sort of came to the conclusion that if we couldn't do a crappy job for 40 years, at least do it in nice weather. It was sort of temporary. We took this place and it was a temporary apartment for 6 months, and it's turned into 9 years.
Like there are times when you just wish that you just had like extra rooms, but the closeness at times it isn't all that bad.
We have been poor, but now we're sort of comfortably middle class people.
Some kids, they still like, I want this, even though their parents can't necessarily afford it.
I mean, you always know when it's payday because you always get fancy dinner on payday.
We have like a fancy dinner, like steak, and then like a big cake afterwards. Like at the end of the month, we have like shepherd's pie.
Mashed potatoes. Mashed potato with rice or something. Yeah. What's in the back of the cupboard? Oh, let's shake the toaster. Sometimes it be like that.
Yeah. You just have to remember where you come from, because at the end of the day, you can have money, and the next morning it could be gone. Like it just kind of teaches you, like, don't take it for granted.
Mom, Megan's deleted my picture.
You can't do that. It's not on the CD.
It's my picture.
Bella's giving the finger to her mom.
Hungry!
I have 2 beautiful daughters, Ashley and Megan. Ashley is 13 and a half, Megan's gonna be 12. And I live in Calabasas. When I first moved out here, people were like, where do you live? You know, what community, what street, you know, what model. People will spend their last dime to drive a certain car where we live, to live in a certain house. I mean, I see it all the time. It's like they spend every penny on what you can see. They like when they look rich, you know. It's a whole image thing. I know someone, she had a boob lift, a tummy tuck, and lipo last summer for her son's bar mitzvah, and then over spring break just now, she had her arms done. I know, like, my kids bug me because they're almost embarrassed that I'm overweight or that I am not dressing a certain way. There's just a lot of pressure, and I want them to fit in and feel comfortable because it's not even to be competitive, it's just to fit in and be normal. You need to look a certain way.
It's important to have nice clothes. Like if you have bad clothes, you're a dork. Or a weirdo. If you go to school and someone's wearing the same outfit as you, it's really embarrassing because you feel like, oh, they copied me. Oh, I can't stand this. I'll say to them, why did you copy me? And I won't wear the outfit again. And if I don't know them, I give them a dirty look, and I don't wear the outfit. One time when we went to the father-daughter dance, about 6 other people had the same dress as me. It ruined the whole thing, and so we left early. I couldn't stay any longer. I couldn't stand it. The popular people aren't fat.
Well, in my grade, some of the popular people are kind of fat. But
well, those are the ones that flew around. The fat ones are the ones that flew around, so that's like popular.
But there's a few girls who are really mean to me. They're kind of fat, but like.
And what do you do? I don't do because she's prettier than them. She's skinnier than them.
And I'm nice.
And she wears better clothes than them.
And I'm really nice.
She's my friends.
But I'm really nice to people. Like, I'm still really nice.
Happy birthday! Aren't you guys excited?
Yeah.
You're going to work out today.
Oh.
Just kidding. You're going to get spa treatments. Yes. You are going to get you're going to get teeth facials. You're going to get massages. You're going to get lavender hairpin dips for your hands. And are you ready to change into some robes and slippers?
Yeah. And then I want hairpin and everything again. I want to get and manicure pedicure. Not once a month. I want once a month.
I don't think so.
I love jeans. I love jeans. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 15, 16, 17, 18, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. And then I have some to wash. The first time Religions came out, I couldn't get them over my butt. I was like pulling and pulling, and I was really upset. So I started crying when I got home, because then I thought I was fat and that I couldn't, be cool because I couldn't have the True Religion jeans like all the other girls. I want like long legs. I have normal size. I can't make my legs get really long. But unless there's some surgery, I'm happy with my cuticles. I don't love my freckles. I think that my arms are hairy. My mom said that I could get them laser. Then I looked up laser. You have to be like 15 and have like your period for like 3 years or something like that. And then I have fat feet. Don't look down. But I want to have a lot of money, so
And a good career.
I don't want to work. I just want to have a lot of money so I can shop and, have expensive horses and, have nice dogs and, I want to have a lot of money.
So, in my work in Fast Forward and editorial assignments that I would do after that, because I've often photographed for magazines and built the work and the access and the research that way, I started to realize that the social and cultural lives of girls had always been a thread in my work, and of course it came back to that in Kids and Money too. And I started to get particularly interested in the way girls construct their identities and the relationship between their inner lives and development and the material world and world of the popular culture. And part of the way this project started was looking at this game of dress up and seeing kind of the way this kind of precocious sexuality and posturing and the way the outside and the external became important to girls at a very early age. And this picture I made before I started the Girl Culture Project, but I kept coming back to it as a kind of, in a way, it summed up the project for me and was a kind of a metaphor for it. This is a showgirl's dressing room in Las Vegas, Anne Margaret, and she has put on her mirror cutouts of models and people that she admires to give her confidence before a show. And she's also written this handwritten note that says, "I approve of myself." So this picture really spoke to the self-esteem crisis in girls, which was kind of the driving motivation for the project, but also was a kind of symbol for the way girls take pieces of the outside world and the popular culture and kind of put them together to make up their sense of themselves. This was a fashion shoot for lingerie in Miami. And a photograph for a sport called Fitness America, which was kind of the new bodybuilding when traditional bodybuilding wasn't considered attractive anymore. This was kind of like aerobics on steroids. And as the project developed, I realized that it was really about kind of how the body had become this primary expression of identity in girls and women and the exhibitionism of modern femininity. This is in an anorexic clinic called Renfrew, and this was from the first time I went there, and then I ended up going back to make the movie Thin. And a showgirl fashion show on an airplane in Las Vegas. And these are 13-year-olds in Edina, Minnesota. And in Edina, being 13 was all about being popular, which had maybe been like that for a long time, but it was very codified how to be popular. And from the interviews I did with girls and boys, you had to be blonde, for girls you had to be blonde, blue-eyed, and thin, but for everybody you also had to shop at 3 chain stores, and they all repeated the same chain stores. And so this was a real kind of pivotal project for me because, first of all, I realized that this precocious kind of growing up wasn't just an LA phenomenon, that it was really more about the homogenization of youth culture through commercialism, through the media, the kind of mass media that we were all sharing, no matter what town we were in. And also, it got me really thinking about this idea of the body project. There was a social historian, Joan Jacobs Brumberg, who wrote a book called The Body Project. And she said that because that American society was providing few protections for girls, and because of that, they were very vulnerable to peer pressure and media pressure. And as a result, we're turning their bodies into these all-encompassing projects. And so my mission became to kind of photograph the Body Project from its most innocuous, kind of everyday grooming and fashion and hygiene to the most pathological and destructive eating disorders and self-mutilation and promiscuity. This is one of the popular girls in Edina in a tanning booth. And this is Lisa, who was not in the popular group in Edina and talked about how miserable life was. And the popular kids didn't understand what they were doing to everybody else because they were at the top of the food chain and they were just eating away at everybody else. But she had her own popularity online where she was president of the Hanson fan club. She was a huge Hanson fan. And this is at Fat Camp. So again, back to this idea of the Body Project and the transformation, kind of the makeover idea. And this was a lot of the kids who would come, this is Fat Camp in the Catskills in New York, and a lot of the kids who would come there would not go in bathing suits in the towns they were from because they were too self-conscious about their bodies. But when they came to Fat Camp, there was a kind of liberating feeling where they would be in a bathing suit and even in their bunks kind of run around naked or in towels, and everybody was kind of in the same boat. Every week they were weighed and measured, and you can see Jennifer on the right holding the stats with all of her body parts, her neck, her wrist, her waist, all being measured. and Amy Smart, the actress. This was from a fashion shoot that I did at the Standard Hotel, which is a real hotel in Los Angeles, where behind the reception they have a woman, a real live woman in underwear, in a fish tank all day long. And I did a story about beauty and what is life like when you're beautiful. And I followed this model, Sarah, who was 18, around New York City to explore this. And some of the things were what you'd expect. She could get into any club that she wasn't on the guest list for. She didn't have to wait in line for drinks. Off-duty taxi cabs would stop for her. But also, people were kind of constantly talking to her and in her face. Somebody asked to be photographed with her, which was a common occurrence, and when she just kept walking because she didn't have time, and he pushed her to the ground. And another time we were in a club, and somebody asked to know who she was and grabbed her. So it was almost like beauty didn't have the same kind of privacy as most of us enjoy. And Sarah was, this is Sarah from the front, and she was the daughter of two intellectuals. Her mother was had a PhD in law, and her father was a professor, had gone to Oxford, and she was the first person in her family to not go to college. She was having all these opportunities in modeling and acting, and knew that youth was a premium and she won't have the opportunities later. So beauty was kind of taking her on this track that she also had some regrets about. She didn't know if she was making the right decision not going to college, but it was almost like she couldn't say no, and beauty was taking her on this track. And this is a quinceañera, the coming-of-age party in the Latina community. And this is Ruby's quinceañera. She's turning 16, and Ruby is not from a rich family. Her mother babysat, and her dad didn't have a job, and they spent $16,000 on the quinceañera. So I was interested in the way rites of passage, traditional rites of passage, had become tied up with commercialism. And this was in the limousine that they hired to go from the church to the party. And I went down south to a very proper finishing school in Chattanooga, Tennessee, looking at Southern girl culture. And this was, actually this was on May Day, and the girls are lifting up their dresses, revealing a garter in the most kind of bastion of traditional Southern culture, to the horror of their mothers and grandmothers who were sitting in the audience. But the interview that I did here was the most surprising. It was with a girl named Mary Katie, who's in that group, and she was a very traditional kind of Southern girl, even more traditional than her mother, and believed that the man, her boyfriend, that she said she was going to marry him, that he should be the head of the household and make all the decisions. He actually wrote to me a couple years ago. They didn't end up getting married, but she was very confident of her heritage and her values, and in a way seemed to have her head on straighter than a lot of the other kids who are kind of awash in the values of the popular culture. And yet, as the interview went deeper, she revealed many contradictions, that she was an anorexic, that she was an exercise addict. She wouldn't go to her own brother's graduation, even though family was so important to her, because she couldn't control her food and her exercise from being in the car all day to go to his graduation. She wouldn't wear spaghetti strap t-shirts outside because she thought it was too revealing, but her friend got her wearing thong underwear, and she said she liked it when nasty guys whistled at her because it made her feel like she was doing something right. So there were all these kind of contradictions, and the most surprising quote was, she said, "I would rather be dumb than be a slut, but I would rather be a slut than be fat and ugly." So that was the hierarchy of values. This is Lily, who was 5 in LA at a store where Britney Spears had some of her clothes designed. And she was shopping with her dad, and she came out in the dressing room and said, "Dad, what do you think?" And he said, "Great, I always wanted my daughter to look like a streetwalker." And Violetta and her sister in a mall in San Francisco. And Aya, who's 16 in San Francisco, picking out something to wear to school. and Sheena in a dressing room in San Jose. And this is the cover of Girl Culture. And Sheena was kind of also a pivotal shoot for me, because in some ways she was a very typical teenager from a middle-class family, went to public school in the suburbs of San Jose, and yet she really she had a streak of exhibitionism and really used her sexuality to get attention. And in her interview, she said, if I could do anything, I would be a topless dancer. And that really surprised me, coming from a girl that had no history of strippers or anything like that in her family. And I had photographed the strippers and showgirls and thought that that connected to this exploration of girl culture, that something about their very marginal exhibitionism also fed into mainstream femininity. And Sheena brought that together for me, because I realized kind of how this idea of the stripper or the showgirl lived in the mind of the teenager. And then that was solidified when I went to Fat Camp, and when there were no boys or counselors in the bunk, the girls would blast the music and dance like strippers and pretend to be pole dancers. And then around the same time, I read an article in the New York Times Magazine in the style section about how the new trendy exercise class was a class called cardio striptease, or pole dancing aerobics, where soccer moms and teenagers could go and learn how to dance like strippers. I actually just photographed in a club in Las Vegas where this was a bridal party activity. And this is Sheena again outside, shaving her arms. She chose to shave them outside, and she said she liked to shave her whole body to be soft, so she could be soft. And so this was kind of a unusual expression of the body project. This is in Webster Grove, Missouri, a toga party in high school. There are girls and boys at the party, but the boys are taking a break to look at Playboy magazine. And since they were looking at a Playboy Playmate as this ultimate woman, I then wanted to go to the Playboy Mansion and photograph real Playmates in the infamous grotto. This is a breast implants in Florida by the doctor who does more implants than anybody else in the country. And he's just placed the implants and is now testing their placement. And this is an actress named Azura Sky. This was an outtake from one of my first fashion shoots. And Harper's Bazaar asked me to photograph the actors and actresses of Hollywood. And we were meeting Azura at the Gucci store in Beverly Hills to do the shoot. And when she showed up, she was so thin, she looked so sick, that I was sure that Harper's Bazaar would not use any of the pictures. And they ended up using a double-page spread of her standing in front of the mirror being fitted by a tailor without a hint of irony. And then I used this outtake in Girl Culture as the lead-in to this photograph of Erin, who's anorexic and is in treatment at an eating disorder clinic. She's actually being blind weighed, which means she's standing on the scale backwards because she can't stand to see the weight gain that she's going through in treatment. But she admits that she listens to every click of the scale and knows very well when the scale hits 100, which is the trigger point for her. They actually don't have these scales anymore for that reason. And Erin was also a cutter, and she's made over 50 cuts on her belly. This is her belly. And she said she realized why she cut herself there, that in addition to being easy to hide, that area represented her uterus and being a woman and really the pain of being a woman. And so she said she cut herself there because she said she didn't mind cutting herself there because it was really just bringing the scars to the outside. And on a brighter note, this is the Stanford swim team. They've won gold medals in almost every competition, including an Olympic gold medal. And girls' sports was a kind of brighter spot on what sometimes felt like a bleak landscape of girl culture. And these women talked about how their signature kind of V-shaped bodies and how that was really the expression of their hard work and accomplishment, and also how it was sometimes difficult to be outside the norm and not be able to zip up your dress or be kind of towering over a boy that you liked. But because they had this kind of singular focused and very positive body project, it kind of protected them from getting engaged in all the other kinds of body projects that they saw their peers getting involved with. This is backstage at a strip club called Little Darlings, and this is a stripper named Lauren. And I was fascinated when I photographed the strip clubs in Vegas by this incredible dichotomy between the backstage life, which was kind of gritty and full of very frank talk about bodies and hygiene, and fluorescent and very unglamorous, compared to the life on stage and the lights and the kind of sexy performance quality. And this is a club in Vegas where you can see girls and big screen football at the same time. The best of all worlds, very American. And the bigger this picture gets, the more her butt mirrors the helmet. This was a picture I made backstage at the strip club, and it like that picture I showed in the beginning, it didn't have anything to do with what I was working on at the time, but I kept coming back to it because in the context of girl culture, it was very meaningful to me as a picture about what is public and what is private, and where the line lies, if it lies at all, if it exists at all. And this is a girl who shows every millimeter of her body. It's an all-nude club to men in very short range, and yet backstage she's hiding the Tampax behind her back. And spring break in Daytona, Florida. When I did fast forward, I was kind of right out of college, and I looked very young for my age, and so I kind of almost literally fit into high school. By the time I did girl culture, I was a little bit older, but had had a lot of years with teenagers, and so I was able to kind of get back in there and be very relatable. By the time I did spring break, I was 5 or 6 months pregnant with my first baby, and I was like an alien there. You can imagine there's a lot of sex play on spring break, and the last thing anyone wants to think about are the consequences. And this was a darker moment on spring break. I knew I was having a boy, and I was just hoping he would never go on spring break. Fetus bingo at a school for pregnant girls in LA. And this was a public school for pregnant girls and teenagers with babies, and this was an educational game. And if you can't read it from where you're sitting, you can imagine it's like episiotomy. I win, bingo. This was Liliana in New York City. She was kind of a Lolita character and talked about growing up quickly and how she was kind of shy and a tomboy, and noticed at an early age getting attention from boys and men and older men, and kind of how that attention changed her. And her kind of love-hate relationship with that attention. She really yearned for it, and would kind of dress provocatively, and then also kind of hated it too. She told me a story, and I'm often interested in this relationship between the mainstream and the pathological, and that's kind of been a driving force in my work. You'll see that with Queen of Versailles too. And she told me a story about getting ready to go out one night and how she tried on literally everything in her closet. And by the time she got dressed, she was so tired that she just laid down and didn't go out at all. And when I went to make the movie Thin, which was about eating disorders, I saw a very similar scene by one of the eating disorder patients who was obsessive compulsive and would literally change her clothes like 100 times in the middle of the night for nobody in the middle of an eating disorder clinic. So I've always been kind of walking that line between the mainstream and the pathological. This is a porn star, and this was a picture I made many years before I started the Girl Culture project. I came back to it because I was really fascinated by the relationship between the porn star and the innocent little girl Allegra, who's 3, playing a game of dress up, and the kind of similarities between the gesture and the red lipstick and the gold shoes, and that kind of precocious sexuality, but in a very innocent context, and kind of what the relationship between these two things have in the popular culture and for girls. This was Amelia, and she was a girl from Fat Camp that seemed to have a kind of confidence and beauty that a lot of the girls did not have. And yet when I went back to do a follow-up with her 8 weeks later, it turned out she was a cutter also, and had started cutting herself at camp, and so had to go home. And I end the girl culture work with this portrait of me when I was 14. And I end with a self-portrait because the mirror is a kind of recurring theme in this work, and I called my essay Mirror, Mirror, which was, of course, an allusion to Snow White and the vanity and competition expressed by the witch. But this work was really also my mirror, and I was racked with body and image insecurities as a teenager, and was always on a diet and wanting to be part of the popular crowd and have the fashionable outfits. And the research and passion for this project really came from my own memories and also my daily experience as a woman, and then from the time I spent with the subjects who I really learned from. So when I finished Girl Culture, it was my first, it was a traveling exhibition, and it actually has been traveling for 10 years and was seen by over 500,000 people. And it was the first project that I did. The book went into 4 printings, and it was the first project that I did that kind of got out of what we sometimes call the photo ghetto and into mainstream culture. Girls and mothers and fathers, and there were these guest books in the museums, and instead of writing about the work like most people do in a guest book, they would write about themselves. It was almost like diaries. And so I realized that the work really hit a nerve, and there was something more for me to do there. And I had my pictures had always been storytelling, but I wanted to push the narrative. And so I proposed to, this is from an educational curriculum that we did with the museum that was used in high schools. And I proposed to HBO doing a series of films based on girl culture. And they came back and said, we don't want to do the series, but we want to do one film about eating disorders. And it was my chance to direct my first film, and I realized that eating disorders was a really meaningful subject because in this whole, apart from the fact that it affects so many women, 1 in 7 under 25, but in this whole spectrum of the Body Project that I had documented, eating disorders were the most pathological body project, and a really compelling and tragic example of how women use their bodies as their voices. And so I started making a film at a residential clinic for eating disorders in Florida. It was an all-female clinic. I worked with a very small all-female crew, and we filmed for 10 weeks over a 6-month period and practically lived there when we were filming. And we were able to kind of go everywhere in this clinic. This is at a therapy session where they bring in what they call fear foods and process in a therapeutic environment what that's like. And the cafeteria, which was the most sensitive part of the clinic for us to be in, where we would kind of always have to give fair warning before we went in. And I'm going to show you the opening clip of the film.
I wanted to see if there's any marks. Okay, turn them over. Okay, turn around, please. Okay, now I need you to drop the back. Okay, all right. Are you feeling safe, Octa?
Yes.
Thank you. Maybe 7-4. Today. The capillary refill is good, but her nail beds are more blue than pink today, but her fingertips are warm.
86/49. 42. What happened yesterday? I think you do. Did you eat dinner?
The film focused on 4 main characters, but in the book I was able to photograph many more people, and this was Ava, who was 14 on her first day of treatment, and then 10 weeks later on her last day. And Shelley, one of the main characters, who was a psychiatric nurse and came in with a feeding tube and had learned, I mean, one of the things that characterizes anorexics and bulimics is kind of high-achieving, perfectionistic qualities. And she was very smart and had learned that the feeding tube, which was meant to nourish her, was also a way for her to purge. This is Brittany, who you saw in the open, in front of, this is a therapy they do called body tracing, where they draw their perception of their own body, and then the therapist draws their real body, and then they step back and look at the difference. And the next clip that I'm going to show you is of Elisa, one of the main characters, who's having this body tracing.
What I'd like you to do is to do an outline of what you perceive to be your body image. Stand back here for a second and take a look at it and tell me, what do you think? What are you looking at?
I think it's about accurate, but the arms might be bulging out just a little too much. It's a stocky person.
Stocky man. It does look pretty masculine, so I'm just curious as to what that means for you with your eating disorder and your body image. That this is the kind of image that you see for yourself.
I think I'm short and stocky.
What are your thoughts?
For a fleeting moment, I thought, no, it can't be. You made a mistake. You went in too far.
What do you think? Looking at this one.
I see problem areas.
So Brittany, the character you saw before, had a really hard time getting better because her mother also had an eating disorder and was not in treatment. And when you're in treatment, it can cost $1,500 a day without insurance. And Brittany's insurance ran out, and her family couldn't afford treatment, so she had to leave the clinic, even though her therapist didn't think she was ready, she didn't think she was ready, her mother didn't think she was ready. And once she knew she had to leave, she started spiraling downhill. And this is a piece of art that she made the day before she left, saying that she wanted to go back to her eating disorder. And the last scene I'm going to show you is from Brittany's last community, her last group therapy. And she has decided that she wants to go back to her eating disorder. And the other women are saying, trying to get her to make a different choice and not make the same mistakes they made.
I know you're in high school and you're surrounded by it. Please, please.
So many thin girls and I'm not one of them. I can't take it anymore.
You've been so honest.
I hate it. I've always been overweight and I'm never gonna be thin. I was always a fucking silly kid. I'm sick of it. I'm so sick of it.
So I'm going to end on hopefully not such a sad note. I made a film last year called Beauty Culture, and if I can get it on here. No, that's not what I want to show you. Oh, maybe it's already here. Yes, it is. Beauty Culture was an exhibition about kind of a 360 look at beauty, and I was one of the photographers in the exhibition, and I made the film because a lot of the themes in the exhibition, from the precocious sexuality of children to the $350 billion cosmetic industry to the challenges of aging and a youth-obsessed culture, dovetailed with my own photography. And so I made this 30-minute piece about kind of our obsession with beauty. And the thing about Thin was it was really, even though I came into it from girl culture, it ended up being really a kind of deep dive into the heart of darkness of mental illness, and not really about body image as we see it in the mainstream culture at all. So this was kind of, but one of the things that Joan Brumberg said is psychopathologies come and go, but they always tell us about the time period in which they were produced. So Beauty Culture was kind of a look at this time period and our obsession with beauty. And I'm going to show you two clips. And I'm going to end with this. And the first clip is with evolutionary biologist Nancy Etkoff, who talks about the origins of our obsession with beauty. And this is specifically about one of the main kind of vehicles I was using in this work was looking at the role of photography and photographic representations. And so this is about technology and Photoshop.
Don't like short legs. They don't photograph well.
Current models are genetic freaks. They seem to have every physical feature that our brain responds to. So if our brain responds to a certain body type, certain facial features, to symmetry, to large eyes, to large lips, to smooth skin, to luxurious hair, they've got it all. And then those people are taken over by artists who can then manipulate that image into something you would never find in nature.
What I find that women ask for the most is that they want to look like a fertile young woman.
The young
Okay, I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to show you one last clip about the plastic surgery piece and aging. And I'm in this one as well. For the first time, I kind of put myself in too as an image maker, and then we also, consistent with that idea, filmed in our hair and makeup rooms. We constructed a two-way mirror and filmed everybody through that.
And it grows. I'm hoping by the time I'm 88 or 90, there'll be something new for me to do.
There was once a sense in America
of the Horatio Alger Up by Your Bootstraps success story. And that dream has been replaced by the dream of rejuvenation, of the makeover, which we never had before.
There were parts of my body which could not be corrected without surgery. I had pregnancy that really had distorted my body. I took a raw look at myself. What really mattered in life? I was no longer married. I didn't own a home. I could let that go. But one of my goals was to be in the best body that I could.
70% of plastic surgery patients make $50,000 a year or less. That's not a lot of money considering that, you know, breast implant surgery can be $6,000, $7,000. So people are essentially tithing their income. Instead of giving it to the church like they did, you know, 100 years ago, now they're tithing their income for breast implants.
I photographed the whole surgery, which was very intense because she got many different surgeries at once, which they will do in Brazil for a good price.
Which I did also have the Brazilian booty lift. That was one of the tag-ons to the process. It was,
we have liposuction, we have belly fat, let's recycle it. Why not? And in the same conversation about surgery and kind of all the cuts that she had, she also told me about her daughter cutting herself and kind of the struggles that her daughter was going through. She wrote in not perfect letters, scrapes, dead, as if she wished she were dead, on her forehead. And it was really a tragic story, but also a really eerie irony how both mother and daughter were expressing their feelings by cutting their bodies.
With plastic surgery, you can't unring the bell. You can't change it back. Once you let somebody cut into your face, you've been cut. You know, you look at these waxen face people who've been shot up with fillers and injectables, and I know so many of my friends still get injectable, and the lip, what's the lip thing? I'm sorry, I don't get it.
Have you ever held an artificial lip?
Okay, I'm gonna end there. Thank you very much. So we're a little bit out of time, but I'd be happy to take a few questions. Maybe we have time for 5 minutes of questions. Don't be shy. Yes.
I'm curious how you gain access to some of these places.
Yes.
Very private, personal spaces.
Yes. The question is, how do I gain access? You know, it's kind of hard to break it down, except for that's the most important element of anything. And I think I think that in a way it's my personal strength. I think it's kind of what got me into doing this kind of work in the first place, and it's also what I've been kind of working at for 20 years. When I made my first film, Thin, that was the part that translated the easiest, and I had to really work to kind of learn the narrative and learn storytelling in that way over time, and kind of story structure. But the access part was really the same as it had been in my photography. And Thin was the hardest access project, and how I spent much of my time. I mean, I worked with a small crew, and sometimes I wasn't even with the DP when she was shooting. I was like working on the access or working on dealing with the clinic. I mean, in the clinic, we spent 2 years kind of working with the administration and the therapist to figure out how to do this before we even started. And once we had their buy-in, they really helped us gain the trust of the patients. But even so, it was still person by person. And every week we would go to the group therapy, and that would be a time where if anybody had issues with the filming, they could bring them up. And anybody in the film anybody in the clinic could choose whether to be in the film or not. And anybody who had chosen to be in the film could choose at any time to not be filmed. So I think giving people that choice and power in that situation was really important. And then we also had to work with them as things came up. I mean, in my photography, if somebody decides they're done or they've had enough, I move on to the next person. In film, that wasn't a possibility. The film would be ruined or over. And so I really had to work with people in a more collaborative way in terms of developing that trust. And if it meant, if somebody realized something in therapy that came up that they didn't want on film, we would talk about that. Or if they didn't want their job in, kind of whatever it was, we really had to work together on it. But it's kind of like breaking down how you make friends. Like if it's a little bit hard to kind of break down, but it's that it seems impossible at the beginning of every story, and then it seems magical, but it's definitely not anything I take for granted. And you'll see if you stay for the Queen of Versailles, that became a very privileged access situation. Yes.
Have you heard from, doing these projects, have you heard from the beauty industry contacting you and trying to dissuade you from your projects, or what?
In beauty culture, there are a lot of models and agents who participated and fashion photographers. And they all talked about their own ambivalence and their own issues with it. I think that in a way, it's like everybody assigns blame somewhere else, and it is a really complex kind of process where the photographers say it's what the magazine people want, the fashion people say it's what looks good in the clothes. Everybody's kind of got something else. But I've been showing this recently at advertising agencies that do beauty projects or beauty products, and it's been a really interesting conversation. But I think one that people are acknowledging of, I think not running away from. But there's, of course, a huge commercial incentive to drive the insecurities that create the market for the products. And that is one of the topics of this. Yes?
You photographed, you said, for Harper's Bazaar as well. It's not a question as much as just how did you do that as opposed to the other kind of photography?
You mean how do I negotiate the contradiction of making fashion pictures? I find it very exciting to kind of walk that line of both for the access and for the audience, of walking that line between making images and documenting between being part of the popular culture and documenting it and criticizing it also. It is, and I always do kind of unconventional stories. So when I do fashion, I do it very real. I often use real people, and I often throw in, I often play with a lot of the themes in my personal work. Like I did a series of fashion spreads for Elle where they said, we want your girl culture style. I was like, really? Do you really want that? And they gave me some choices, and they said you could do like boxy skirts, and I was like, I have no idea how to do that. And then they said you could do lingerie fashion, and I said, I really can get my teeth around that because I don't really think girls should be walking down the street in lingerie. And so I did a whole series of kind of absurdist scenes where it was kind of very inappropriate to be in the lingerie, and they loved it. Like I did also Tyra Banks for the Body issue, and it was all about kind of the exhibitionism and body culture in Miami. And so I just try to be subversive enough that there's some commentary in there that the reader gets, but also show the clothes so I can take those 12 pages. And The Queen of Versailles is going to be very similar because it's being released in theaters by Magnolia, so that will be like the art house crowd, but then next year it's going to be on Bravo, and it's kind of like a reality show that goes awry. So I think reaching that mass audience is really important to my work, and so I try to get there, but bring the subversive qualities to that too. And I think that's a good way to end. I hope you stay for the movie. Thank you very much.